Take one. So, Harrison Paul, it's good to have you back. Thank you very much for joining me again. This is our second interview after the first one that we did called Let's Talk About Race in Ireland. And the one thing that I want to start off with right now is just to get your take on some of the feedback that you've gotten in the aftermath of this interview. What have people said to you? What have Black women, Black men, white people, what has been the response that you've gotten actually since the interview came out and since you've been receiving so many messages about it?
I think it's been wonderful. We're on the right track, you know. Have to give you credit. I think God used you in that first thing to kind of transfer what I was doing in like stories and Instagram stories and transfer it into, something that people could replay or review or share or, you know what I'm trying to say. So I think it's amazing because we've taken a step up from where I once was in terms of just like stories. So it's been really good, and even in regards to the negativity, although I don't like to mention negativity, I feel like it's triggered people, which is the most important thing, because I think that triggering people to think of things that they have been, they had put aside or they had okayed in their mind is something that is what we're actually trying to do. So it's been great.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for that. No, I mean, I can definitely say that on my end too, that, I've received both positive and negative feedback. The negativity, as you said, we don't even need to get into, because I think while it's good to receive criticism and receive helpful feedback, I think feeding negativity, it just takes away from the message, and it takes away from what it is that we're trying to do, especially with, the message that you're really putting out on your platform. The one thing I wanted to point out to you, something that I think we've spoken about privately, is the response that I got from a lot of Black women who watched our interview, especially their response to you as a Black man, talking about the negative attitudes that a lot of Black men have towards Black women, talking about, the defamation of the Black woman and how, the image of the white woman was put above the Black woman by a lot of, young boys, especially young boys that are living in Ireland. And so what have Black women specifically said to you, if you've received any feedback directly? What have you noticed in the Black females that have watched this interview?
Well, I'm in a relationship, so I think a lot of them kind of don't want to seem as though they're overstepping any boundaries. But I do feel a sense of that I'm scratching an itch, silently in many ways. I have got a lot of feedback and stuff like that. But I do feel a sense of scratching an itch, and it's something that I'm able to kind of sense, whereas, I think Black men, there's been a whole lot more of conviction, because that story was me trying to convict them, right? So I felt that as well. I felt a sense of, conviction from the men that they didn't really appreciate that as much. And they felt like, oh, you're exposing and telling our secrets. But there was this, and I sensed it just as much as I sensed the positivity from Black women. So I did get a few messages, but there's been a more of like an interest that's gone into what I'm doing, and I feel that's because there's an itch being scratched. So for me, that's the best. A lot of people will silently appreciate things, and that's something that I'm very okay with. But I feel them kind of seeing that there's something to drink here, that kind of a way.
No, I get what you're saying. I think on my end, the feed, what I got a lot from a lot of Black women, especially the Black women that, listen to my podcast and the ones that follow me, that have been following me since before we even did our interview, is that for the first time ever, they felt seen. A lot of them were saying that, it's so heartwarming, also painful, but heartwarming to see a Black guy, a Black man who not only sees us in our light now, but like actually did the work to, begin to see us in the way that we have been seen. Because, I will speak from experience that, being a Black woman, it does bring us challenges. Being a woman in the world does bring us challenges, but being a Black woman, especially when you're living away from, your own country, there's so many ways in which you're marginalized, so many ways in which, people use you. If you look at, for example, the standard of beauty across the globe. If you really really look at it, a lot of the things that people find beautiful, a lot of the features that a lot of women are going under the knife for, going under the needle for, are actually features that are very typically black. For example, people getting lip fillers, but yet the amount of times that I, as a young black girl, grew up being made fun of for having such big lips, the amount of, I remember black girls growing up in Ireland. Our lips were called juju lips, that kind of thing. People made fun of the very features that they're now going under the knife for. People would make fun of us having such fat asses. And now you see, the Kardashians essentially spearheading, having curvier bodies, despite the fact that anyone really can be curvy, but despite the fact that the particular phenotype that they're going for is something that's very much common and typical to African women and Southern American women, and so,
which are African.
Exactly. And so in watching what you were saying, a lot of black women came back to me saying that for the first time they felt seen, and not just seen for how people can benefit from us, but seen for what we are, seen for our experience. They felt that there was a lot of empathy in what you said. And so they're quite hopeful. They're very quite hopeful. But the one thing that I never really got a chance to properly get into with you, that I, wanted to get a chance to ask you about, was your son. The fact that, so to backtrack a little bit, in the previous interview, Harrison said that his current girlfriend is the first black woman he's actually been in a romantic relationship with, and that previously he actually had a son with a white lady. And I want you to talk me through that. Talk me through the journey of, okay, I don't date black girls, to completely unlearning that mentality, to then falling for one. And how then do you reconcile that with the relationship you have with, your son's mother? How do you reconcile that with the relationship that you have as a black man raising a half-white baby?
That's a very tough question.
Sorry.
That's a tough question, and a tough question to answer publicly. That's what I mean.
Should we cut it out?
No, no, definitely not. Wow. Oof. It is. Life is real. Let me say that the first thing I want to say. Life is real. And there are real things in life. Although we want life to be kind of like a fairy tale at times, I think there's real things. There's real things like cultural differences, there's real things like such as this. So I feel, although I'm at the moment fighting to be in his life, and I'm going through that, I also think, it's very difficult because, at the very same token, you will have a lot of white people or black people who will feel like, oh no, I'm fine with the baby mother of my child. I don't need to. That statistic is not for me. But it's funny because I was just on the phone yesterday talking to a black brother who told me that his baby mother, who is white, is keeping him away. Keeping him away from the child. And I feel like that story is way too frequent, black men being had done by and being kept away from their mixed child, and there is this sense of entitlement that the white mother gets, what I mean? I think any woman gets it, but of like, and I think it has a lot to do with the dynamics of white and black people, where they are a master in a way, and they can decide the fate of that child, right? They can decide, oh, you're not going to be in the life or whatever. This brother also passed on to me that the father of his child, the child's grandfather on the mother's side was racist. I cannot tell you how much times I've heard this story, and it's so sad that we have to, even now, we're forced not to pretend that that's a true statistic in order to make people feel good about it, but that is a real statistic. It's a real thing that of like, there are so many cultural differences that, eventually I feel the white mother feels like, okay, my people subconsciously are superior. So, you know, I'm going to keep my son in a safer place. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then you get put in this lower position where it's like, I'm saving my son by keeping him from you because you're a black man.
So essentially, just so I can be sure that I understand you. So essentially, it's a case where, so what you're putting forward is there is already an inherent understanding of the black man's inferiority in comparison to the white lady, right? And so that the white lady has that understanding. And so for whatever reason, she still joins up with black people anyway, because I remember coming across a statistic. I think something, Chimamanda Adichie herself actually said in one of her books, Half of the Yellow Sun, she said, it's possible to love something and still condescend it. And so you have a lot of white women that are getting together with black men, but then they still harbor some kind of superiority complex over black people. And then when push comes to shove, when the relationship works and they, you know, the hypnotization of the black dick, sorry to use that word, but the hypnotization of black penis kind of goes away and the reality of motherhood and parenthood kicks in. And then all of a sudden, everything that was in the shadow in terms of how they truly felt, maybe not necessarily about that black man particularly, but by their culture, then comes out. And then all of a sudden, that's when they're like, okay, you can't be around my kid.
Let's do what's best for the child.
Okay, that makes sense. I just wanted to be sure that I didn't want to misunderstand you.
No, definitely. And it's like I happens too frequently, right? And like you know, let's say you want to teach, there's African values that we want to teach our kid, right? There's African values that we want to teach our children. We want them to, and we have been raised and have been taught the beauty. For example, African families can be maybe quite strict, let's say, on certain cultural things. And we want to, and you're kind of like, no, you're bringing your barbaricness on my child. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, you know, you have to say, yes, yeah. For example, you knew yourself when you were raised in an African home or when you went to your white friend's house and you just felt the air was different, right? So now you got a child who is having where we know how white people, the air is different to let's say a Nigerian home or a Congolese home, or the air is the air of discipline, all these is different, right?
Especially with the respect issue. That's the one thing that I've noticed. If there's one thing that African culture very much pushes in its children is respect of the hierarchy, respect of your elders, respect of your parents, respect of the people around you. Respect is a thing that is really hammered into a lot of African children growing up. And while of course that exists in every other culture looks at respect very differently. And so the one thing, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, but the one thing that I noticed growing up for myself is that, you know, unless my friends were like the Eastern, like, you know, the white girls that came from the Balkan side or that came from Eastern Europe, you know, growing up with my Irish friends, respect was very much a thing, but it manifested differently. Like I was allowed to call my white friends' parents by their first names. That would not even exist, even in like a Black American household. I think you would say ma'am or sir or, you know, that kind of thing. So the values are different in just, you know, because of the difference of culture.
Right. So now you're trying to, it brings me to a story, for example, right? There's a mixed race girl I spoke to, and she said to me, she was like, you know, because I was doing my stories and she used to watch and she goes, you know, I grew up in a home where, because when a mom falls out with the black man, right? The mom falls out with the black man. There is a loathing, not just of the man, but of his people, you know? Yeah. So there becomes this habit in the house where you're bad talking him, but you're bad talking the home. You're bad talking. So like, for example, I'm going to give a very weak example just for it, right? Your father, da 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 da. And they used to eat with their hands. I didn't get it. Right? That's a terrible example, right? And that's why they eat with their hands. I didn't get it. That's in passing. She's done with him now and she's going to say this. Or he was very close with his mother, and the way he speaks to her, I didn't get that. You know what I'm saying? Where black men are raised to be very close with our mothers. You know what I'm saying? And in a kind of way, and honor them within the relationship. You know what I'm saying? I always feel like a European kind of thing is to kind of say like, you don't honor your mother as much within the relationship. You know, there's one thing I love about Tilda right now. I think anybody who can see who follows me, there's a lot of honoring my mother within the relationship. You know what I mean? Which is totally an African thing, right? So, and here's another point, another dynamic to that, right? I'm gonna be vulnerable here and say, so my father, my biological father, obviously we were not really much in each other's lives growing up, and I have to keep it honest with you for the viewers to learn from it, not because I want to put anything out there. And, you know, it's funny because recently I met up with him. Not recently, but we've been connected since I was about 18, really.
Yeah.
And I did make some mistakes when I was in my teens, you know. But I think he thought that was because I was rare to dislike him. But really, it was because I was a disrespectful teen. If only he knew in the house I was disrespecting my mother as well. You know what I mean? And my stepfather. So, like, there was no sense of, like, it wasn't personal, right? I was just going through teens. Just being kind of things. But I think he immediately felt at times that it was maybe like, oh, this is what he's been taught to speak to me like. Right? But I want to get to something very special here, and I know he's probably going to see this, so I want him to know. When I got of age for us to have a personal relationship outside of my mother, and even now, I've been seeing my grandmother of recently on his side, and I think they all thought, I remember one thing they all said to me was like, you see, now you're grown up, and you can kind of see, you can see the truth, right? That, like, now you've come to find us. Because that's what they always say. When a kid grows up, they'll go to find their family. Right? And I think they thought that it was like I grew up and then I kind of saw that, oh, my mom wasn't right after all, and I went to go find my family. Right? Which was actually not the case. Despite the disagreements between the both of them, she stayed very mindful in my whole upbringing to respect me, him. Despite what happened between them. That's one thing that I admire so much. And now they're wondering, oh, we thought she was telling you hate these people all these years, and now you're here, and they thought the love that I was now showing them in my grown was based off of the fact that maybe I found the light outside of her. But I think they're even forgetting that she raised me to say you respect your elders regardless of who it is. You know what I'm saying? You respect it regardless of what she feels about it. So the respect that they're feeling, my father and my father's mother and even his family members, you know, despite them there being a split, comes directly from cultural. You know, it will be an embarrassment to my mother. This is what I love about African culture. If I grew up to disrespect my grandmother, because that looks to her like, what way did you raise your child? African people are very important with this. You know, very, you know what I mean? Like, are very serious about these things, right? So where I see where sometimes a lot of white mothers may get wrong, because culturally it's like, even if you had a disrespect, a falling out with the father, you don't know that you're destroying the child by even teaching him to speak that way about an adult. But they don't have that amongst their culture, right? So he's saying, oh, your dad was effing this, I didn't get the culture, I didn't get the this, and I didn't get the that, I didn't get the that. And these are elements to blackness. Like, for example, God forbid it's not going to go wrong. Actually, I'm not going to speak on my one, but I'm going to speak on any black people. Majority. One thing I've known about black women, and I've seen it with other people's friends, other people, family members, other stuff. When the father and the mother did not work out, the mother will still raise that child to honor that. And that black woman probably was cheated on that guy 10,000 times. But
Ever
you
beaten or hit or
and do you know what I'm saying? But he was still brought up to say that's your dad. Respect. The same way we were raised when an auntie comes in, you don't say, what's up, Louise? How are you, Auntie Louisa? You know? So, because it's embedded in our culture to uphold respect, if my mom's child was known for kind of like scallywagging every off elders, they'd be like, what did you do? Did you do your job correctly there? You know what I mean? Which is a beautiful part to African culture, right? But I feel like that's something that we don't get when you do integrate, right? Or interracial relationships, even if it doesn't work, even if it doesn't work out, I think that's a positive thing about black women. They still gonna know that's your dad. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know black women who are not with the aunties who are not with the father who will still hit the "I'm gonna call your dad,"
yeah.
as like a punishment. So he's still like the leader, even separately.
Yeah, what you're saying is that, with the way African women are raised, there's still the understanding of the fact that you don't just come from one, but you come from two that became one. And so, unless something extreme, like, I obviously I'm not going to say her name, but I have a friend of mine also from Zimbabwe. If I were to sit and tell you some of the things her father has done, you would understand why she openly disrespected him. Because unless something severely extreme has happened, there's still that understanding of, okay, but this is my mother, this is my father, this is where I come from. There's the, even if you don't like him or don't speak with him, because I know that's a situation. There's still a lot of black kids that I know who don't talk to their dad, but talk to their dad's mother, because of the understanding that legacy comes from two family trees, not just one.
I love this so much, and if there's one thing I love so much, I have someone close to me. I'm not going to mention them for the sake of their privacy, and the father and mother is not together, but and in fairness, that woman, she's taken a lot, But when it's time for family gatherings on that side of the family, when it's time for, she gonna drop the kids there. She gonna drop the kids at that family gathering. She gonna make sure the kids are there. She wants, and that family respects her because they're like, whoa, despite what happened between you and him, you still know hierarchies. I don't know if hierarchy is a way to.
I think it's the right word.
Because yeah, and that almost, even now when I think of her, that gives her so much honor. In a sense where she just seemed like someone who, despite emotions, is very culturally grounded. Culturally, so like that's the thing that Africans we have. Like, there's so much cultural grounding. Like so much. Like I can remember, like respectfully, like there's just, look, I have to say, there's so much differences to white people and black people culturally. Every black person, we even make jokes about, like, you acting like a white kid, or you get away with it. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's like, now, I'm going to keep it honest, I'm going to bring it back to me. Good thing my son is only 4 years old, and I pray every morning for this boy, I pray. Regardless, even if it's not about me, I want him to know how to respect elders.
Yeah.
I want him to know, I want him to understand these things. And there's so much cultural things that are such a class that I realize, and I have to keep it honest, it's like, was that a good idea? That's why people wondering was that a good idea?
What was a good idea? I want you to verbalize it. I think it's important that you verbalize it.
Was the interracial, was that a good idea? Was that a good idea? Because there are things today, like for example, there are things today that make me who I am, that people will call my mom and compliment her. I have to keep on not trying to boast and say, oh, your son is so well-mannered. There are things that and I like not regular for African children. When you call, if I call a Nigerian boy in here today, he'll say, "Hello, mommy, how are you?" Yeah, just just pure class, you know. And whereas I remember, especially Irish, because I grew up in Ireland, they're not taught they have to take it that far, you know. And I remember I used to admire like Irish kids because they would talk to their auntie like the auntie was their friend. Stop it, will ya, Eva? And I'm like, oh, that's cool. He can talk to his auntie like it's his mate. Look off, auntie. Oh, no, I didn't mean it like that. You know what I'm saying? But then, what they don't understand, and I love about African culture, is that when push comes to shove, those lines cannot be blurred. Because then that's when you see a child then make a sloppy comment like, don't give an F, you know, or F up, because those lines were blurred. I remember I'd come into the kitchen, my mom would be talking to, shout out to my auntie Natalie, I love her so much. And she'd be talking to the kitchen, right? And I boast about this. I come in the kitchen, she's talking to my mom, and I'll probably come in to get some juice real quickly, and get some juice so I can go back out and go out play with my friends. And I was like 12, I don't know, 13, 14. And I go in the kitchen, and she comes to me, she goes, and I'll get the juice and go back out, and it go, Harrison. And I'll come out of the kitchen, she pull my ears like this. You don't know how to say hi, no? You know? And she remembers, she's like, you can't say hi, no? And it's like, show some honor. Like, we're a beautiful culture. Beautiful culture. That I know that if I drove home with a white woman, and my son, let's say she was there, and an auntie did that to my son, and then she's like, I don't like how she told him today, pulled him by the ears and told him, why? Oh no, that's just what you have to do because, you know, African culture, you got to do this. I just don't like how that happened. You know what I'm saying?
I see. So then when, let's say, for example, because the one thing that I have seen, and I'm going to speak purely for statistics here, I'm not speaking even personal opinion. I'm looking the statistics. You can look them up yourself. So I saw a statistic the other day that floored me, but the moment I saw it, I thought of you. And I wanted to bring the statistic to you. And I think we probably talked about it on Instagram DMs, but there was a statistic that I saw that the least successful interracial relationships, so the most successful interracial relationships occur between Black women and white men. They're the ones that have the highest success rate in terms of longevity of marriage, economic situation, all of those things statistically, right? And the least successful are Black men and white women, right? Going back to what we talked about a few questions ago, where we said, okay, talk me through being a Black man raising a mixed race child, and the point that you made that, you know, there oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes a lot of mixed race children that end up being raised by, in this case, you know, their white mothers, but just the white side of their family, end up hearing and being exposed to a lot of, even if it's not outright blatant racism, but a lot of prejudiced, condescending attitudes, they end up being exposed to a lot of that. And so before we get deeper into that aspect, I just want to talk about the statistic I gave you. Why do you think Black women see a lot of success when they interracially date, but a lot of Black men don't see success when they do it? Why do you think that is?
Let's take a second. Let me just think about that.
Because while you're thinking, is it cool if I just give what my take was?
Please do.
So the one thing that I have seen, especially online, especially in conversation amongst so many other Black women in my circle, is the idea of us just saying, you know what, loyalty to our race is not helping us, because it's not helping us because we're getting treated badly, we're being overlooked, we're being cheated on, the statistics of domestic abuse, our men are, you know, turning their backs on us. There's so many factors that a lot of Black women have to consider. You know, for example, you know, I remember telling one of my white friends saying, oh, every time I like a guy, I have to ask myself whether or not he would date a Black girl. And she was like, huh? You have to ask yourself that question? And I was like, yeah, even if I'm talking about a Black guy, I have to ask myself, does he date Black girls or not? And so you'll find that a lot of Black women are now adopting the mentality of, you know, it's a mentality that was started by a woman by the name of Crystalline Karazin. And she said, dear Black women, please go where you are loved, wanted, and celebrated, and not where you are tolerated. So if that means you're going with a white man or a Black, whatever it is, it has to be a place where your value is seen. And so in my experience, interracially dating, things that were either overlooked by a lot of black men are things that a lot of white men celebrated in me. Things that I was insecure about when it came to being with a black guy were things that white men were very open to learning and understanding. And there's an openness that they had about my experience, about, my culture, things about my blackness that black men would say, oh, that's a typical black girl thing. Every white guy that I've ever dated has invested time to learn how to take care of black hair. Even if I never had to ask that. But the very elements of my blackness that were disrespected, that were defamed, that were disregarded, that were made fun of. Do you know that the only people in my life and that have ever called me monkey have been black guys? The church that I went to, I'm not going to say what the church is, but you know who you are if you're watching. You and your friends used to call me, not you, Harrison, but used to call me I was known as pet monkey. That was my name at church, being pet monkey. I've never experienced white people calling me monkey. I've experienced some racism, but I've never experienced white people saying I look ugly. In fact, the only people that have ever made me question my looks have been black men specifically. And so what a lot of black women experience is we're essentially, in the words of Crystal and Carrison, we are relationship refugees, right? It's almost like nobody wants us, so we just go where we're accepted and loved. And our experience in general, and it's not all the time, because there's one particular relationship I had with a white guy that was not successful at all. But even then, my race wasn't a thing. It was just personality differences and other issues. But generally, myself and so many black women that I know, who, even if they don't interracially date with white people, but they, for example, the two girls that I know that are dating Asian men are the happiest women I've ever seen in my entire life. When I say the princess treatment is not enough, they are being treated like they are queens. And that's something that a lot of black women feel when they then say, okay, you know what? Black men don't like us. Let's go where they like us. So that's what I think. Because then when women feel safe, loved, and valued, they are performing at their best. They're at their most feminine. They're at the most submissive. They're at their most womanliness. And a lot of men like that. And so obviously then white men see this and they're like, oh, okay, this is nice. This feels good. And so it's easier for them to also be a man. Because there was a question that I saw on Twitter. A black guy was like, why are black girls more feminine with white men than they are with black men? And I'm like, well, we feel safer. So it's easier for us to be soft and not challenge and not demand. I remember, who was it that said it? So I spend a lot of time on Twitter. But one of my friends who lives in Germany, I'm not going to say her name, but she was like, anytime I'm dating a white dude, the attitude goes out the window. And she's like, I am just this little soft little girl. And so for me, that's why I think it happens. So because we feel so safe that we're able to just be at our best feminine, as feminine. And, then obviously men like that. They want to take care of it. That's why I think black women are very successful with white men, but not with black men. That's because I'm speaking based on my experience. That's why for me, I still am not against interracial relationships, because I've seen too many black women finally find happiness in them for me to be like, it's not okay. But I want to know, that was my tangent, sorry. I want to know what your take is.
Now, I don't have anything for that quite yet. Let me dwell on it and really sit with it. But what I will say to you is the reason for that statistic, right? And I'm sure about this. Let's look at Suella Braverman.
Sorry?
Let's look at Suella Braverman. This woman is right. She's the,
Go ahead.
Yeah, she's the UK. What was she? She was a Home Secretary, and they were using her as a ploy, using her as like a weapon to an internalized racism weapon. You know what I'm trying to say? She's internalized it so much that they use it as a sword to say, okay, we don't get the chance to say this, so we're going to use Suella and Rishi to really say and validate it, right? And I want you to understand that, unfortunately, that's what happened with the black man, the black woman. There is, the black man feels like a monkey, so he's a Suella Braverman now. He's going to go to you and say, monkey, pet monkey, pet monkey. But Suella, one thing that I love is like, Suella is suffering with so much self-hatred. Like, it's actually unhealthy. This woman, like, I'm watching her, she loads. I know she looks in the mirror and thinks, if only I was born white. Like, she hates herself.
so much that there's no empathy for what she may say for anybody who's like her. And why is no empathy? Because she hates herself. If she loved herself, she'd watch what she say, because she's like, but there's another Suella Braverman just like me out there that this comments may be harmful towards. You know? But because she doesn't give a damn about Suella herself, she can say whatever she wants about Suella. You know what I'm saying? So this level of self-hatred is so unhealthy that she can say these things. And I want you to know, like, that is what has happened with the black man. There's a level of self-hatred, a loathing for ourselves that we were able to behave in this such a way, right? So when you think to yourself, you have to understand. That's one thing that helped me, and I understand that you guys can feel like we go where we're loved. I want you to know that when you do pick a black man, do it out of being a revolutionary, and then understand that, okay, I'm gonna go for a black man who has a revolutionary mind, because that is the number one thing that's going to, the same way I think you should go. Every woman should be going for a black man who's a Christian. Because I think that's the man who won't cheat. I think that's the man who's going to fear God before he goes out and cheats on you. Personally, for me, you know, I said this before on my Twitter. I think women should be going and looking for a guy like that. If he cheats, if he even thinks about it, he's thinking, "Oh my God is going to disown me," you know. And his relationship with God means so much to him that when that temptation passes him, he's scared of God. It's not even about you, because as we know, love is not a feeling; it's a decision. There are going to be seasons in your life where your woman becomes mundane. Matilda doesn't look at me, you know what I'm trying to say, like all the time, like how she first looked at me when she first saw me. That's one thing I'm learning. Marriage and relationship is supposed to be seasons and changes. It's not supposed to be everything when you first met. Oh, he's so cute, or she's so hot, or see that. There are supposed to be seasons where she got the bonnet on, she's just chilling, you know, and it just become whatever. And we should look forward to those stages of marriage. You know what I mean? Like, we should look, or else we're going to be continuously dropping that and chasing the stages of marriage that I feel fresh again. And then you find deeper reasons to love the person, right? So I feel like a man, right, is supposed to, women should find a man who loves Christ so much that everything that he said to you, he said it to Christ. First of all, he prayed for you. So when he got the answer, he's like, God, you gave me this opportunity. I'm not going to let you down. So now when he's faced with this temptation, he's not just looking at you and saying, oh, Tilda, or, you know, whatever. Sorry, I'm going to put myself in that position. You know, in 10 years down the line, when we 10, 20 years, he's not thinking, oh, that's just, you know, it's deeper than that. It's like, this was my word to God. This was my responsibility that the Lord gave me. Do you understand? So the same way the Lord came down to Adam when he ate the apple and said, Adam, and Adam was hiding. You know what I'm saying? It's the same way a man should feel that sense of like, I regret the day that the Lord will ever have to say, Harrison, and I'm hiding behind the bush because I just ruined everything. You know what I'm saying? And this is what you should look for. And I also feel like, I believe that's what you can bet your money on most times. And then number two, I think that you should look for a man who has a revolutionary mind. The same with Chris, just the same thing. So now he is, do you know what I'm saying? So I understand. So look for the black men who are revolutionary mind, and then you find that, because yes, unfortunately, we have to understand that our race are victims to what happened to us. Right? So as much as I'm annoyed with Suella Braverman, and I have a right to be annoyed with Suella Braverman and Rishi Sunak, I also have to understand that, for example, there's a black lady in Aldi that I always see, my local Aldi, I always see her. And when I first started going there, I felt this case of like, she's like my mom's age probably. She always tried to, because I was black, she didn't want to seem like she's giving me attention. You know, like, special attention. That's what black people, we always feel that sense of, and it's because we're mirroring what we feel from internalized, you know what I'm saying? So I always felt like sometimes she was a little bit rude with me when she would deal with me and my stuff, a little bit rude, and I didn't like that at all, and I didn't like that. And every day I come back, like I said, I love black people. Not because I get love back, because I'm doing revolutionary love. So I'll go again, I'll try again tomorrow. But I'm understanding, and when I would come home and have conversations with my mother, she's like, you don't even know the half of what she's probably facing. Because there's another woman in there who's a white lady, and she's kind of old, who just every time she tries to find a jab to give me. Like some underhanded jab, you know, and I just love being awake, because as Negroes before, we were so asleep to these. So you think someone's saying something nicely, and you're like, oh, watermelon smile. Just what a nice lady, huh? What a nice lady. Yeah. Yes, boss. Yes, boss. Huh? You know what I mean? What a lovely lady. Now I'm so happy that I'm awake now, and I'm like, that, don't. And when they're like, here's a black man who's awake. Press the red button. They're like, we thought you guys were asleep and no consciousness. Press the button. You know what I mean? I thought I would. And so I see her, and me and my mom said, "We're like, can you imagine what comments she's giving to that woman in work?"
Yeah.
You know, she's already drowning. So when we look at someone like Sharetta Braverman, and we know that the British government is so racist, can you imagine all the suit and tie men in suits in there who are gave her jabs to a point where she wanted to come out of her own skin. And then she wanted to prove to them that, look, I've come out so much of my own skin that I can attack my own skin. Please believe me that I'm no longer in my skin. Watch me. Would I really be in my skin if I could punch it in the face like that? You know what I'm saying? And this is what black people do then. So then you have boys who say monkey, and then you have boys like me who would be bad to black people, women, and internalize the colonization, I feel. So a lot of the time, because white people are quite slick like that, a lot of the time, I don't look at racism as much as I look at how the black man has internalized it. And that helps me to understand how far we've come. I still feel we're at a place that even black women still feel afraid to toss all the wigs. I think that's a declaration of how far we actually are as a society.
Yeah, we are afraid, and I will say this. So there's a black girl in my life who's very close to me. I see her like a little sister, and when she wears her natural hair, she looks literally like, when I say looks like a goddess, it's an understatement. When her hair, especially her afro puff, is out, she looks stunning. But the number of times she would text me from wherever she is saying, oh, I wish I wore my wig. I wish I wore... And then despite the fact that when she's wearing her natural hair, the attention she gets, not just from, when I say from men of all races, the attention she gets, but that's not even enough for her. It's so deeply rooted. And I blame porn, because the one thing that a lot of people don't admit is the number of women that also watch porn. I blame porn. If you look at a lot of porn sites, you'll find that a lot of I'm very much against the porn industry in general. So if you see me saying anything complimentary, it's for the sake of conversation. A lot of the good quality porn, you find that it's, big-breasted, blonde-haired women with hair like down to their... And a lot of the amateur-looking, almost primal, kind of animalistic-looking porn always feature black people, specifically black women. And so, because a lot of young people engage in porn, they don't realize how that's programming them. So even their standards of their expectations on sex is very different. On how they see themselves is very different. I've spoken privately to a lot of black girls who say that, I'm insecure to wear my natural hair, even with my husband, because I'm, I don't look, even if their husbands don't watch porn, I don't look like what the movies say, like, the blonde hair, that kind of thing. And so I really also think that, just to add on to what you're saying, there's a deep level of programming that goes so far into our value, right? Everything from, the racial profiling makes a lot of young black men feel, do you know that, like, I know a lot of people have this, right? But I feel like black people feel it even more, where walking into a shop and you don't buy something, you feel like you're a criminal. Everybody feels that way. I know white people that feel like that, but a white person forgets about it after a few seconds. I go home and I'm still thinking about, I hope they don't think I stole something, because a lot of white people don't know what it's like to be followed around a shop But a lot of black people know what it's like to be followed around a shop. A lot of white people don't know what it's like. I'll give you a story. You know, my dad was once accused of taking diapers by an Irish lady. An Irish lady went to the security and said, that man stole diapers. And my dad was like, so where are the diapers? And they wanted to call the police. And then that's when my mom stepped in, being, you know, a black woman. She stepped in and said, let's look at the CCTV. And then suddenly the lady that accused my dad was like, no, maybe I saw her up. My mom was like, no, we are looking at CCTV. Looked at CCTV. My father did not. When I tell you that woman saw my dad walking past the diaper section, and her racism built a narrative in her head. And she was like, he took the diapers and put them in his jacket. My dad opened his jacket and said, where are the diapers? Where are the diapers? He took his bag. Show me the diapers. My mom said, show us the CCTV. And then they saw the CCTV. My father didn't steal a thing. And the woman was like, I'm so sorry. I saw wrong. And my dad was like, okay, so what exactly did you see then? Nothing. You know what I'm saying? It's so deeply embedded. It's so deeply embedded that I get what you're saying, that it's almost like you're looking at someone who's like in the final stage of drowning, you know, before they just shut up and go under.
There you go. And sis, this story is going to be good for y'all. I hope y'all enjoy that story. Eat that one, because that was so nice.
No, seriously. The one pivotal experience that my mom can point to in terms of what made her realize just how bad racism is, because she came to this country from Zimbabwe where she never experienced racism because everyone was black over there, you know, and because my mother is light skinned, she even benefited from colorism. And so, you know, coming to Ireland, right, and then your husband is accused of stealing diapers, and then you go on CCTV and he didn't even touch them, you know.
Can I touch? I think I think I remember your father is even a very very sophisticated man. If I'm not.
Yeah, no, my father is both my parents are the poster children for what diplomacy looks like.
There you go. So that's why I think, you know, we always say when you get an education, you'll get you know the black skin will zip off. But I seen someone said this and when I was watching a documentary on what's his name, that guy, the baseball player who was so famous, who killed his white wife.
Oh, what's his name? O.J. Simpson.
O.J. Simpson. And some guy, his manager said this, and I appreciate this. He goes, white America will zip up your nigger suit so quickly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, big
so
time.
you think you've taken off that nigger suit, and now finally I'm one of them. White people, they will zip up your nigger suit so quickly you won't even know what hit you.
Have you ever listened to the song "Story of OJ" by Jay-Z?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, when he said, "I'm not black, I'm OJ." Okay, literally. There's a lot of, and I promise I have not forgotten the mixed race conversation.
No, I actually wanted to go back to it. So you say, because I wanted to go back to it, especially.
I want to actually tie back into that. There are a lot of people, black men and black women alike, who, and apparently a lot of not a lot, but some Hispanics also go through. But I'm not Hispanic, so I don't want to talk about that culture. That's not mine. But and also Hispanic is a culture, not a race. Sorry, but there's a lot of people, a lot of black men and black women alike, who, and I know because I've also been, you know, guilty of this as well. I'm sure you have. A lot of black people feel that by attaching themselves to whiteness, by attaching themselves to non-blackness, right? They are, in a way, they're setting themselves apart to say, oh, I'm different. A lot of the people, you know, especially because I'm having debates now about whether or not I even want to call myself Black Irish. And the reason why, as I'm saying, is because someone who hates me for my skin color is not going to care how thick my Irish accent is. They're not going to care whether or not I can talk like Aoife. They're not going to care about any of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, someone who hates black people isn't going to care how well I did in Irish. They're not going to care how many Irish friends I have. They're not going to care, oh, does this person have black and Irish in their bio? They're not going to care if I have a kid with every white. I could have 10 mixed race kids with 10 Irish men. They're not going to care. They're not going to care.
I once wrote a status. I think it just cracks me up because you reminded me now. Please, I just want to add it and you can go back. I said, because I started to see this. I tweet things that I see. You know, I was in town one day. I go,
having a mixed race child doesn't make you any more white. You're just a Negro with a mixed child. That's what you are, with a half white man. Like, they separate you from that baby. You know what I'm saying? It does not make you any more white. You're just a Negro. And in fact, to the real racists, they're kind of thinking, what idiot reared him our bloodline.
Thank you, because I wanted, and you yourself can choose how much of this you want to include in the interview. You said something in the first interview that has stuck with me to this day, and it will never leave me. You said that white people see us more than we see ourselves, right? I think, going back to the mixed race conversation, I think that is the reason why not a lot, and I know it's not all of them, because I know white women that have children with black men and they're very good at co-parenting, or, but I think that's why you find a lot of white ladies who end up in the cycle of, oh, I was with the black guy, but then I decided. It's because their fathers, right? Let's just speak generally here, right? Of course, there's generally their fathers. If you look at, because I remember you also said that one thing that you admire about the white man is that he puts his people first. White men take care of their women statistically. Generally, they look out for their women. Even if they are unhappy with their women, you cannot disrespect a white lady in front of a white man. It's just not going to happen. A white man can complain about women all day, but if you as a black guy then decide to insult a white lady, in his head you're insulting his mom, right? And so then you find a lot of white girls probably get told by their fathers, don't go with a black guy. Those men don't even like their own women. Those men don't even know how to build their own, they're being told lessons of manhood. And then they learn, because unfortunately a lot of women end up having to make mistakes in order for us to learn. And then they learn the hard way what their father was trying to tell them, right? And then when reality kicks and they realize they have a kid involved, suddenly their mommy instincts come into play. And so now they begin to trying to protect their kid from their perceived danger. They try to protect their kid from what they were told many times of their fathers, their uncles, their grandparents, their brothers, the men around them, that stay away from these Negroes, stay away from this they begin to see that, and then they try to, and now obviously the black men that I know that have children with white women are not predators. They're not mean people. They are very cultured people. They're very smart people. They're men like yourself who love their people and also just want to see their kid. But obviously, their fathers, like on the other end, have seen the collective of how do I say it? They've seen how black women are treated by black men collectively, and they don't want their daughters to be part of that. Yeah. And then eventually their daughters internalize it. So that's what, for me at least, when you tell me about the contention between, white women and their and the black fathers of their mixed race babies, oftentimes I think it's because of the programming that they had growing up, that no, you stay away from these people. Because in as much as a lot of black guys get together with white girls out of rebellion, a lot of white girls also do the same thing. Like, I went to an all-white, a majority white girls' Catholic school. I know how white girls talk. I know how girls talk. I know, going to university in the Netherlands, I know how girls would sit down and talk about the difference between having sex with a white man and a black guy. I know the motivation that is, a lot of white girls get together with black guys just for experimentation, and they accidentally fall pregnant. A lot of them aren't actually trying to have mixed race babies. They're like, oh, I heard BBC is a good thing. They also see how black women elevate black men, and they also want a part of that too, because people will want to go for something that's considered valuable. And as much as black men disrespect black women still put black men on the map. And so they see how we treat black men, and they're like, no, I want a piece of that too. They find themselves pregnant, and suddenly everything they were being told at the dinner table when they were 16 suddenly comes to their head. I don't know what you think about that.
I can't even count how many times I've had females who I was dating who I had to get a report back about my parents had made this racist remark, my parent made this racist remark, and I keep tweeting this over and over again. I would think that was some sort of accomplishment, like, ha ha,
got her. You know what I'm saying? Like, gotcha, got your product. You can't do nothing about it, daddy. It's like, where's the self-respect? Now, if someone told me, oh, my dad said this about you, I said, oh, really? I just start to get my jacket on. All right, cool. I'm gonna bounce. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I was to go back then, right now, I wouldn't even go there to start with. But if I was to go back then, and I remember, I think a lot of girls were like, oh, my dad made this comment, or my brother made this comment at the dinner table, or this comments were made, or remarks were made. I'd be like, this comment was made to, oh, for real? All right, cool. Then let's go get a white dude. I'm out. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm out. Like, where's the self-respect? Oh, it's her, it's not the family. Move out there. Now I'm supposed to give you a child, and I'm supposed to believe that none of that's going to leak on my little boy? Like, we're not thinking straight. Listen, next thing I want to say is this, because I want to get back to this. It's really important to me. I want to talk about how your black mother stood up for your black father in that time. And that's a perfect explanation as to, in the shop, that's a perfect explanation as to why a black woman gets your experience. A black woman gets your experience, gets your war that you have to fight, you know? She's fighting the same war, you know? And it's like, I just loved how you said that. Your mother came in or whatever. I said this, like, let's say my son, sorry, I have to say this, comes home from school, and there are so many racist connotations that his teacher is making at school that are going right over the head of the mother. So she came home and said, Mama, mommy's 5 years old. Mommy, just playing. Oh yeah, my teacher said that. A black woman can know. I know what that comment is. I've been black for 20 to 30 years. You know, let's say it's a young mom, even she's young. I've been black for 30 years. I know what that would mean. You know, I goes, oh, mama, my teacher said that I've been black for 40 years. I know what that comment means. You know what I'm saying? I know what that connotation means. I know what that and what was so important, I remember growing up, that made me who I am now, is that there was some notes I'd bring home from school I get whipped for. You know? And there were some moments that my mom knew, all right, it's cool. It's time to go in to the school.
Yeah.
Boom.
Because she understood.
She understood the war. She understood, no, I know this is an attack for his race. You know, this is just, I know my son can be, he's mischievous, he's whatever, but this is just you having a field day with a black child. Do you understand what I'm saying? And even now, white people watching this, they'll say like, oh no, you probably were bad. And that's the things you just will not get. Unfortunately, you're not white, black. You will not get it. You will not get it. I'm sorry to remind you that not everybody from those times when racism was happening in the 60s is dead. Not everybody who was alive during the 60s, who raised children, who are now adults and are teachers, that mindset wished away in the sea. No, some of those people are teaching our children, are doctors to our women giving birth. This is real life. So then that person who still has that warped mindset has a way of eating at my little mixed race child, black boy, eating at him. And what I want to do, this is what I don't like about this whole thing about two parenting. That's why I took so seriously that my thing made me decide properly that I need to, what that did for me was made me take sex seriously. It made me realize, boy, you gotta pick and you gotta think deeper when you pick, right? Because now there's days where he's gonna come home from school and he's gonna be playing, goes, oh yeah, my friend said this. And daddy's not going to be there to hear that comment.
To hear that and then say it. Because dad will understand that what that woman said was actually backhanded racism. But someone who never had to experience racism will not understand what that means.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I remember growing up as a kid and seeing so many moments that we were out somewhere. I had to go with my mom to go to like some sort of office to pick up things or whatever. Or she was doing her paperwork. You know how we have to do like stuff got to do with that. And then you're getting racism in there. And I would see my mom saying, da, 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 you know, giving this woman stick. I'd be so embarrassed. I'd be like, Mom, you're embarrassing us. You know what I'm saying? But now I grow up and I realize, no, some places you got to put your foot down on these folk. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and that's why I think it's so important. And you think, oh, it's whatever. Now, it's such a hard job. And even places where the mother will swear and say, no, I know that person, or I know my auntie, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, for example, I remember was one reason I had to cut off one of my good friends, where this sentence really annoyed me, because I told you about the story when I exposed that police guy with the cap, and whatever, and he says to me, oh, I know one of the guys who was there, I know him, he can't be racist. You're not even black. So, what do you know what it looks like? You don't know. You just know an N-word. You don't know what it looks like. Just shut up. You know what I mean? Oh no, I know he couldn't be. You don't know. It's like me saying, like the person, he couldn't be insensitive towards what's it called? Crippled people. I won't know. All I'll know is I won't know if that person makes connotation, underhanded content. I won't know if that person has a condescending eye in the back of his mind. I won't know what that looks like. I'll just know the big signs where it's like, you're crippled or you're retarded. And if he just keeps himself from that, I won't know the underhanded ones. So how am I to say, no, tell a crippled person, step back, don't worry, I'm a professional with this. I know. You don't know.
You're not disabled, and so you don't, the intuitive, innate understanding of what discrimination feels like is something that can only be understood by someone who has experienced it, or someone who's unlearned their own discrimination. Because one thing I'll tell you, the easiest non-black people to talk to about racism are the ones that will say, I used to actually have prejudice towards black people. And then they are the easiest because they know exactly what that means, what it feels like. They can look. I don't know if you know sorry?
It's a recovered kingpin turning into a cop.
Exactly. They know exactly. I like that. Say that one more time.
It's like when the recovered kingpin is now working on the corners and he's a cop. You know what I'm trying to say? He knows now they're not going to be there. They're going to be on that corner. Now they're not going to do it this way. They're going to do it that way.
Oh, well, he knows. He knows exactly. And so there is this how do I say it? I think to kind of to bring it back to what you were saying about now, it hurts you that you have to now, you're not there to be able to pick up on some of the things that only you can understand growing up as a black boy, especially because I've seen pictures of your son. He looks just like you. He's light skinned just like you are. Obviously he looks mixed race, but you're a light skinned black man. And so in a way, his experience and your experience will be very, very similar. And so, would you say then that one of the biggest obstacles that a lot of, I guess, mixed race children that grow up in two-parent households, because I guess even if they're in when I say two-parent household, I mean like separate homes, like a broken home in a way where the father lives in one and the mother lives, oftentimes, I've seen a lot of mixed race kids that end up living with their mothers. And so is it that you're saying that a lot of mixed race kids are essentially being set up for not being understood even in their own homes because they don't have their black fathers there to be able to shed a light on the other side? Because let's be real, no one is unless they're like you, there is no person that is discriminating against white women in terms of their dating pool, in terms of including them in the dating pool, right? So go ahead.
No, go on, just finish off.
Oh no, I just wanted to say that there's a discrimination that they just will never be able to understand because they've never experienced it. And so even if for example we have, because for every one person that doesn't like black, I know a number of white ladies that love black culture, that that educate themselves on it. So but even if they're like that, are you saying that there's a blind spot that they have in terms of what their child could potentially experience and how they can help their child?
So let me tell you this, right? This is something that I will even give in fairness to white women that black people now need to understand, right? There's a level of self-determination that the black man needs in this hour. Can we all remember, I'm going to tell you this, my mom was 15 years old when Africa got its independence. My mom was 15 years old when she was not allowed to sit with white people. I just want to say that again. My mom was 15 years old when she was finally allowed to sit with white people. My mom is not that old. She just celebrated her birthday 3 days ago, something like that. Meaning that it is impossible that under a lifetime, every single toxic thing that allowed rules like this to take place has been cleansed.
It's just impossible.
It's just impossible, right? So I want to say this. In this hour, the black man, independence was a flag. We got an anthem. African independence was an anthem and a flag, and that's what it was. There is still so much mental work to do for the African.
Yeah.
We have so much mental independence to independent the whole people. And the leaders who want to do that, killed. The leaders who understood this, Lumumba, were killed.
Thomas Sankara.
There you go. Gaddafi. There is a job here. Or they're demonized. And I'm going to say it because Zimbabweans don't like this. Mugabe. Men who looked at Britain and said, we are no longer a British colony. I love that so much. I love it when I watch him. And he goes, we reject that. Whether you like him or not, he was one of our own leaders who spoke out. My mom always says, Harrison, I loved Mugabe. I hated Mugabe, but I love him because why we hated him was because it was the first time we ever saw an African leader speak to a white man like that.
Yeah.
Go to those places and say, they want to think we're still a British colony. We reject that. Like, up your sticky. That's something that, and right now, one of the main things that I'm trying to do as a person, that was something that stuck with me. It's like the prioritizing of ourselves over their feelings, over their judgment is what I'm trying to teach. So some people say, was that status unnecessary? I'm posting towards the bigger picture of like, watch how I do not care. Because once you have that, removed that place where you are so mindful of them and conscious of how they feel or how they may think, that was a part of the mental slavery. So where our black consciousness is going to come to a reduction of how they feel about things. You know your black conscious when you're watching yourself break the bricks down of what will that white person feel about that? If I'm rude, or if I say this, will I be demonized? Will I be this? Will I be stigmatized? Will I be this or that? Breaking of all them walls, right? Let's say this. So let's say this. The black man has so much independence work to do. We got our flag. I know y'all like to take to Twitter on Independence Day and say the flag, the face. I know y'all like to do your stunting, and you think while you're wearing the Eurocentric weave, while you're wearing a colonized wig, you're saying the flag, the face. I'm not gonna get there because y'all gonna hate me for it. But I'm still seeing that word. It was just a flag. It was just an anthem. It's just a dance. It's just music. It's not a real independence. And I feel that's why I give shout out to the Irish. But their damage was not as high as ours. There was an understanding of the assignment towards the British when they had to decolonize their minds. So that's why the Irish are so about like when it comes to, because they pass down that this is a war. It's not just we're independent now we're Irish. It's about tap dancing and going. No, it's about breaking and pulling off them chains that they had us in for years. And we can't, and if you're a person who think you're going to play about that, they don't play. Like a few Irish people come to me about, don't you talk it, my granddad tapped me down and told me, and I admire that, and told me what had happened when we had the famine, we couldn't get anything. They about smoke. Like, okay, cool, I respect that. Now check this out. There's a huge job that the African has to do right now to the minds of his children that surpasses feeling, that moves into duty. There are things that I have to do that are so uncomfortable for me. I'm telling you, hey guys, if you think I want to be public enemy number one, newsflash, it's not nice. Newsflash, sometimes I want to chill. You know what I mean? But I understand there's a duty that I have to do that's past my feelings.
Yeah.
That I don't think a white woman is as inclined to understand this duty that will have to go, that goes past what feels good, like telling your child, you know, your curly hair is beautiful. Like, you're beautiful. Well, I know you like his loose curls. Who doesn't like some loose curls? You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, woohoo, you're a Black Panther white mother, No, it's not. There's deep, 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 deep work, like Black parents. And you asked me the last episode is going to come out, like, what should Black people do? Every Black parent should be a Black history graduate from social media. You know what I mean? You should be, every Black person, your pastime should be reading Black history and understanding the webs to this fight, the mental webs. If you're saying it's done, you're a damn liar. We only got independence like 30 years ago, 40, something like that. It's impossible that every single web from back when it started to when Africa got its independence in Zimbabwe, everything is dead. You've been manipulated to feel like that because that's the best thing you can do for your spirit of fear. But there is work to do. There is absolute work to do. Every Black parent should be reading. Every Black parent should be watching documentaries. Every Black parent should be understanding the web. I wrote a status today and I said that if we gave Africa all the money in the world, they would give it right back to the white man because the mind needs to be free. The mind has not been free. That's why my mom wrote this book. She realized, oh my God, I love God. Really love God. She realized that on independence, when she was going back and she goes, because they just dumped us like that, we were like children who were like, oh, how do we operate? And even in America, a lot of people said, we want to go back to our slave master. In Zimbabwe, a lot of people cried, bring them back. What have you done? They hated our revolutionaries because they took away, they didn't know how to operate outside of that. There are still a lot of things like this. There are webs and webs and webs that have to be implemented into our children, and our children should be revolutionaries. Every Black person should be a vigilante, teaching your child this, that, and the other. The same way Irish people were teaching their kids the fiddle and teaching the kids when we happened in this, and then that happened, and then we went down the 19 ticks, and then the breakfast came down to us, and Neil Cullen had to do that. When you sit with a granddad, an Irish granddad, he gon' school you on the British people. He gon' school you on whatever. So that's why I feel that it's a big, big, big job for a white lady. And now what's going to make her inclined? And what I want to say is because I believe, and I'll sign off on this, there is a mode that the Black man has not even reached yet.
Yeah.
Because, you know what I'm saying? We have to discover, like, I remember, like, if you think back to the fact that our identity was taken from us. Even now, we're still scrummaging, looking for what we were before the abuse. What we were before we were colonized, before we were found and then done everything. There are parts to our culture that will forever be lost.
Yeah.
Because of what had happened. But what I'm trying to say is, okay, I don't know but we must certainly be on the mission to get back there.
Yeah.
To get back there and figure out there is a mode, and every Black person thinks that your mode is like, oh, when you've. I'm going to tell you what it is. You don't think it's this on your conscious mind, but your subconscious mind, I'm going to tell you what it is. When a Black person is in the midst of white people, it's like, Black excellence, look at me. I elevated. I'm no longer a Negro down there, a real Negro. I am now sophisticated. And this is what Black excellence looks like. Because look at me. I'm in a circle of white people and I'm wearing a suit and I have finally made it. No, there's an essence to the Negro that we are all on pursuit of. There's an essence that made us special. That's why I believe we're an Israelite people. There's an essence that we have to go and find. An essence of courage, an essence of strength, and an essence of Africanness and it is a big, big, big job that people like Malcolm X, people like Huey Newton, people like oh geez, the other Black Panther revolutionary. But these guys have passed the baton Mandela, even Julius Malema right now. There's this vigorous pursuit to the essence that's going to make us this people that are a force to be reckoned with. I believe what Africa is now to people, and when we do get admiration, it's not a force to be reckoned with. It's a beautiful decoration. Oh, look at the Africans, how they dance and they sing, but look at the China man, look at the Asian man. His people are this force to be reckoned with. You know what I'm saying? This vigorous force, and they're getting to their thing. Even the Irish. I believe Conor McGregor was why the world loved him and the Irish loved him, is because he was known for the fire of the heart of the Irish. And I feel like Africa, we've had great spells of entertainment, but there is this fire that the world are gonna be like, are these the people that we tried to kill a couple things? The villain story, where we're back, and we think that we're coming to that now because look at us, we're in good spaces, and we now have a supervisor role in a white company, in a white corporation. No. It's gonna be trust me, it's gonna be a real revolution, and it's going to take black men and women, fathers, teaching and sitting down their children and teaching them history. It is appalling that most African parents came to Europe and did not remind them, oh, by the way, these are the people who had. I don't think every African kid was taught at home. These, by the way, the people we're going to live with right now are the people who, because are the people who colonized us and did all these things. We just wanted to forget that. And this has a major part to do with the conditioning that happened to us. So when we talk about a white woman raising a black child, the responsibility is huge. Of course, everyone God creates is beautiful, it's wonderful, and I believe that also mixed race kids will have a story to tell, because you know what, like that kid told me, and I always take that girl, not kid, that woman who I spoke to, she was able to tell me the ends of what happened in her house. She was able to tell me that my dad was insulted for his culture. I was subconsciously made to look down on black people because of the language, the reckless language that was said about him and about his culture in the house, right?
Yeah.
So there is a job for the likes of the mixed race people at the same time, because now they're like the informant in a way, right? They're like the informant, but I will say every mixed race person, I see a lot of mixed race people, and I have to say, I'd be lying if I didn't see a level of confusion. I'd be lying if I didn't see a pattern of a level of confusion. A level of confusion. I always see that confusion. There's like a confusion of like, there is a confusion. There's a confusion. You know what I mean? Like,
I get you.
either a rejection of the black side, torn. So that has to be addressed.
Yeah, I get you. In fact, there's it's a big job in a way when you're dealing with someone who comes from a marginalized group of people. And I also, I really liked the way that you closed that off, and I like the fact that you closed it off with the term big job, because I also now want to close off just with something that when I think about it, it angers me. But it angers me not to a point that makes me want to fight, but it angers me to, when the stereotype of a parent saying, I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. Yes. It's what makes me feel like that when I see a lot of black people especially buying into the programming that the world has put about Africa. Because what they don't realize, because here's the thing, right? If you look at, I want to talk about, okay, I'm just going to give a personal experience because I think that's just the best way. My last relationship was very emotionally abusive. I was on the receiving end of a lot of emotional abuse. And when I finally crumbled and I became a shell of a person, I was 10 kilograms smaller than I was now. Harrison, the Tatenda that you see now, you wouldn't recognize her 2 years ago. What I went through was awful. And then when I finally spoke up for myself and I finally was ready to leave, guess what? The first thing happened. The fingers were pointed at me saying, well, you did this and you did this, and now look at you. You're weak. You're this. Basically being criticized for the condition that I had literally been put into by the way I was being treated. If you look at it on a macro level in terms of colonization, the African continent was ravaged. It was raped. It was taken advantage of. It was turned upside down by this system that was poisonous, that was cancerous. And then when the result came to be a continent of people that are broken, a continent of people that are poor, a continent of people that are suffering, the world then turns around, points fingers and says, you see, you can't take care of your people. You see, you're the people that are inferior. You see, you're the ones that are living in corruption. You see, basically, it's almost like someone comes into your home, trashes the place, takes all the good stuff, and then comes back a few minutes later and says, you live like animals. And that is the attitude that the world has towards a lot of Africans. That's the attitude the world has towards Africa. They forget that we only got independence 30, 40 years ago. They forget that for hundreds of years, we had 5% of the in Zimbabwe, 5% of the population had all the voting rights. The Black Zimbabweans weren't allowed to vote. They completely disregard what led Africa to be in that situation. Right? And then they point fingers and say, you guys are sick, you guys are inferior, you guys are this. What pisses me off is when I then see a lot of Black people adopt that same mentality, then Black people who will sometimes even sit in rooms with white people and agree. The Chris Rocks of the Black community. You know Chris Rock, the one that was slapped by Will Smith? Do you know that, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but have you ever seen that interview where it's Chris Rock and white comedians, and then one of the white comedians says, is it okay if I say the word nigger? And he says it like, and Chris Rock is just sitting there laughing, kikiing, saying haha, and the other white comedians are kind of like, yo, like, dude, like, what the fuck? That's not. One white guy even stood up and said, nah, maybe let's not say that. He even understood the importance of having respect for the culture that's in front of you. But Chris Rock was busy kikiing and laughing or whatever. And I say this because I've also been guilty of it as well. And so I hope that as Black people move forward, as they watch this or whatever, they unlearn the idea that they are inferior. I mean, the reason, you see, my grandfather wasn't able, the reason why your grandfather wasn't able to build a big home is because he wasn't even allowed to get a job. The only job that he was allowed to get was being a gardener or being a security guard. The reason why your grandmother doesn't speak English is because she wasn't allowed to go to school. And then now that they left 30, 40 years ago, when your grandmother can still remember what it's like, you're now saying, oh, you see, how can a continent recover from 300, 400, 500 years of complete savagery in 30, 40, 50 years and expecting it to be operating on the same, and then we'll be compared to the Asians, we'll be compared to Japan, we'll be compared to we'll be compared to ecosystems that aren't even similar to us. And
then there's neocolonialism. That's a real thing.
That's a real thing. And so,
just quickly, I want to add this in because it's important. There was one country, I forget what it is. I think a few of them did, but there was a country that was actually called the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization. There was a contract that we're in the midst of getting independent, and they actually named the contract the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization. Yeah. Come on, guys.
And then, but the thing is, it does it for itself because you now have what are supposed to be the leaders of the community being the first ones to throw us under the bus. And so I can only hope that the programming, I'm not concerned about how white people feel about Black people anymore. The system of white privilege and white supremacy has made it clear how the world sees Black people. I don't need to debate a system that has made it very clear that they don't like me. So I can only hope that the deprogramming and the unlearning starts with us first. Because
sorry sis, because I just have to. My mom said in her book, she goes, and I love this, it stuck with me. It's like, I think we're forgetting that when we were our Black leaders were also under colonial rule. Yeah. They're like, doesn't every Black leader that we have, it doesn't mean that they have a revolutionary mind. They might just be educated and know where, but it doesn't mean that they were people who have a revolutionary mind and understand like freedom. You know what I'm saying? So like, they go into power also having a colonized mind. A lot of them also believe, no, the best way is to give the white man power.
Yeah.
So they get into a room now, because we have to be mindful. They get into a room with those Macron, and Macron is giving him the same energy you get from those racist people who try to undermine you. And he's shaking your hand and saying, I have power. You listen to me. And some of them crumble under that.
Yeah.
And be like, okay, yes, master, I'll sign the contract. Do you know what I'm saying? It doesn't automatically mean because they were a leader, they were a revolutionary mind. It doesn't mean that. There were special people who were revolutionary mind, and they made sure to demonize them and kill them off. You know what I'm saying? So let's almost be empathetic and realize that, let's say the father of an African leader, right? Currently now, yeah, he's, let's say, 70 years old. His father raised him being colonized. So just because he was probably educated and was probably the head boy in school and his life just took him to being an African leader did not mean that he was decolonized.
Yeah, he was not decolonized at all. If anything, he probably used the stepping stones of colonization to get him to that degree. He was probably making deals with outsiders to help him get to where he is. Let's not get it twisted. Being a black leader does not mean that you are a black revolutionary, because you don't have to be a leader to be a revolutionary, but every revolutionary is a leader. I'll tell you that.
Oh, there you go. Did you want to say something? Because I just wanted to add that in because you had said it.
No, essentially, I just wanted to say that I'm going to use a word that I saw online and I was like, huh? But it's the only word that makes sense. We have to unfuck ourselves as black people. We have to do that because I have no reason debating a white person about racism. I have no reason talking to an Asian person about pro-blackness. There's no reason for that because there are groups of people that are very much for themselves. But black people are not for ourselves. We are for everybody else. And the only way I think that we can see change is if we deprogram and unlearn all of those things. And if we get out of the idea that we are inferior, because that's how a lot of us feel. And we don't want to admit it because it means that we have to then unlearn the thing that helped us get accepted. But the thing that helped you get accepted is your inferiority. It is the fact that you're seen as inferior but nice, that they're like, oh, she's special. She's an exception. Your exceptionality is not because they think you're great, it's because they can tolerate you. That there is a very big difference. And as someone who's stepped into my identity, I work in a predominantly white office. I am the only white black person and at least I receive respect. And it's not because I'm trying to be white, but because I've seen what real respect looks like when you step into yourself. It's not people saying, oh, you're very good. When I tell you, I don't get that. I don't get that.
It's lonely. Because a lot of white people are not used to giving black people that kind of respect. So if you think that you're going to be able to hold that respect and then be everyone's friend, a lot of them are not used to giving you the respect that you deserve.
The thing is, when you get it, you can tell. And that's how I know what I'm talking about. But it's the kind of thing that you can only experience. There's the faux respect that comes from being, you're very good. And then the respect that comes from, okay, we're trusting you with this task. Yes. For every black person that works in an office where people are like, oh, you're very nice and very funny, they will never be given important tasks. As someone that gets given important tasks, I know that's coming from a respect based on how I conduct myself, not because I'm trying to be like anything. And so I think, to close off, the one thing that I can say is that it's very important that you take time to, what you said, learn and understand your history, learn and understand where you came from. And be compassionate. First, have some self-respect. Thank you. Seriously, have some self-respect. Your continent is not inferior. There's a reason why they're trying to bring it down so much in the first place. And if you understood that depth of power that you had, you would not be trying to seek approval. You'd be trying to seek freedom. Believe me when I tell you, approval and freedom don't exist. You cannot be free and be approved of. That just doesn't work.
And I want to add this one. I keep saying last thing, but my mother is in work. She's back in finance after taking a long break out of finance. She's back in, and she talks a lot. We'll leave that for the next episode, but we'll just touch on it briefly. She talks a lot about her battles that we'll get into our next episode. Stay tuned. And it's awesome. I even spoke to another brother on the phone yesterday who was telling me corporate world. I think he had got a job in Facebook, and he was telling me, kind of expressing those hurdles in the corporate world of what you face. But I'm going to go to my mother because I didn't get much detail on his, but he just kind of briefly told me it's tough there. And I'm just going to say, like, there's one thing of standing your ground, and there's another thing where she's actually now learning, I'm going to challenge somebody and and she always says this, and I'll sign off on this. She works from home, right? And she goes, every time she has to go to the office, she gets super nervous, because she spent the whole time slating people on on Teams, and giving people, or in emails, or giving them back, what I'm saying? Like, they're trying to put, and she's digging, and that she could just swipe past that. Like, we think, just let it go, just focus on, no, she's not about that. She's like, no, we gonna roll the sleeve. We're gonna take the earrings off on that situation. You know what I'm saying? And we're gonna get to handling that one. And now they're kind of like, oh. And I remember it started like this. I told her, she goes to me, Harrison, at the beginning, when she first got in, she goes, Harrison, I don't want to be seen as the angry black woman. And I was like, so? And that's one thing that we always encourage each other. It's like, as a black person, you got to learn to own your stereotypes. Learn to own your stereotypes. Once you own them, and it's like, yeah, I'm dangerous. What next?
Let them think that. That way the wrong people will stay away from you.
Say, there you go, being a black dangerous person. I used to think that we used to think it's like, no, I'm not dangerous. Get out. No, it's like, yeah, I am dangerous. Yeah, I might be. I might be. Like, boo. You know what I'm saying? Like, when they clutch, like when an old lady clutches her bag, you should walk past and say, boo. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. So there's a lot we're going to talk about that. And anyway, guys, you close off, sis.
No, thank you so much, Harrison, for that conversation. I can't wait for the next one. And thank you so much for the people that took time to listen. And I hope that, as I said before in the previous interview, I hope that you listen with an open mind and an open heart and an open ear, and that you are willing to learn from the conversation that we had. I'm learning from the conversations. Every time I talk to Harrison, I'm learning. Every time I'm watching Harrison's stories, I'm learning. And so thank you so much for joining us for this conversation today. And I can't wait for the next one. And please tell your friends and family, please share it. Please put it out there as much as you can. I think even if it's not something that you think applies to you, it's always nice, I think, to be able to hear different perspective of how people have lived life. And I think as we move forward as a people, regardless of who is watching this, I think it's important that we dedicate some time to unlearn and deprogram, because it's not just black people that suffer from white supremacy and white privilege. It's not just black people that are going to be suffering from prejudice. Something that a friend of mine, a Dutch girl, actually said is that the reason why she does not understand racism is that there's a lot of white people, or whoever is racist, really denying themselves the opportunity to experience really good connection with other people just because of a prejudice that probably didn't even come from them, but came from what they learned. And so, even if it's not an experience that you can directly understand, I hope you can take some time to unlearn and deprogram some things that may have been put in your head, because all of us have a lot of unlearning to do. All of us are living in a system that has programmed us in one way or the other. And I think true independence can only come when we not only think for ourselves, but are able to act for ourselves as well. And so with that, I wanted to say thank you very much, Harrison, for this call. Thank you very much for the people watching. Thank you to Tilda for editing. And I'll see you next time.
And I'm on a mission for you.